So where are you based at the moment right now?
I'm up in Newcastle, about 2 hours north of Sydney. So my wife has family here, so we've got a bit of support around us, which is great. We haven't really had that for probably 5 years now. So and my son's almost five, and he was born in Dublin, so we've kind of lived away for a long time. So it's nice to be close to family and friends, and no lockdowns and things like that. So being able to see everybody, so which is really good.
Yeah, for sure. And you're in Japan last season.
Yeah, I was in Japan too. I finished up in Japan because we're having another baby, so we decided to have the baby here in Australia. So um, we didn't. Yeah, we kind of it was a bit tough there on the family. So trying to have the baby there. So yeah, did a year, coached the forwards and defence at NEC, which was a real learning experience. First year of coaching, and yeah, big change.
Learning experience.
Yeah, I was, I went from probably being at one of the most, the team that barely loses to a team that hasn't won in 3 years. So it was a huge change for me. A team that, like being in that Leinster program, probably I did appreciate it, but I don't know if I appreciated how much I could have appreciated how good it was and how, being with the guys that I was there and, and just the ease of everything that how well run a club it is, compared to others. And, heading to NEC, it's obviously in a rebuilding phase for them and trying to get, to the top of the top league in Japan, which is going to take some time. But with the guys there, I think it's going to go in the right direction.
Yeah. And how is it like, winning, they say winning's a habit, losing's a habit, but challenging when you're trying to turn things around.
Yeah, take the small wins. I think that's important. I think the small gains you make, towards that win is important. We went the whole year without winning until we got to the playoff game. We won one and lost the second one by about 3 points, I think it was in the end. So yeah, just take those small wins. Try to focus on the improvements and see what you've done well, and obviously, be honest with where you need to get better at. I think it's a difficult process, but winning masks a lot of things that you're not doing well, and then suddenly you have a big loss. So I think when you're losing all the time, everything's kind of on the table all the time. But I think when you're winning a lot, you push things aside. So it's important when you win, I think, to review as hard as when you lost. I think it's sometimes even harder, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And is that something like obviously your time at Leinster, winning loads of trophies, like doing well, winning pretty much most games, but are you kind of looking for the faults?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and that's something that Stu and Leo do really well. And I think the big thing there is just the same guys in the roles for a number of years. You look at the coaching staff; it's been pretty constant, but then the backroom staff, pretty constant. Those guys, that's you're learning as you go. The mistakes they've made, they're fixing, and you're not starting all over again. When I went to coaching at NEC, you're starting all over again. With a whole new coaching team, the high turnover of staff within the building. I think that's really, a really, really big thing that Leinster did well. You look at Mick Dawson was there for, since the start of professionalism in rugby. So, when you have that, and in my time at the Brumbies, I think we had three or four different CEOs in my time alone, and that was only 6 years, 7 years. So, the consistency of staff is a really big part of why Leinster have been successful.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, isn't it? Like that's often overlooked, like that consistency. And even with them, like players, coaches, because obviously the coaches, the messages that's coming in, it's like you're attacking this way, now you're attacking this way, then you're defending this way. And
Yeah,
even like with players, like getting combinations, it's
yeah,
huge. Like it takes two years, or it's usually the third year, then things are like
yeah.
A1.
Yeah. If you're constantly trying to, if you're constantly changing, you're constantly trying to build, and it's becomes very difficult. I think that you know the advantage that Leinster have is those players are all from the same region and same area, know each other's games really well, play a lot of footy together from a long time, and that's a huge advantage. And the same with the coaching aspect. The coaches know each other well, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and then even bringing Shawnee back in, we all know what his strengths are and what he can do. So I look forward to seeing him, Shawnee, add his little imprint into the game as well.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you find your time at Leinster?
I loved it. I think it's as I said before we started recording, we really miss Ireland. My wife loved it there. The family loved it there. So um, learned a lot from my time there. 4 years. A lot of successes, and then a few games that didn't go our way, and big losses as well. But I think all in all, it was just a magical experience for me. I've always wanted to test myself in European rugby. That's something that I really wanted to do, to play in Europe and play in a good side in Europe and play big games in Europe. And I got to achieve that there with Leinster.
Is that like why you left the Brumbies? You kind of always had an eye on wanting to play at the top level there in Europe.
Yeah, sorry, you have to excuse my young kid in the background. You can hear him screaming.
Yeah.
He's a feisty one. Yeah, I think that I remember my father saying to me years ago, and he wasn't he's a rugby guy, but he wouldn't know the game that well. Not for a long time now. But he was like, you should go play in Europe. I think you'd be good in Europe. And then every time I went over to November series and things, I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed the crowd aspect of it. I toured there in 2006 with the Waratahs, like A team, and and I loved it. I loved playing footy there for some reason. Maybe I love the cold and all that. I love the changing conditions of the seasons. I think in Australia it's kind of does get cold in Canberra, but the games are pretty. When you play a game in December and January, it's totally different to a game that you're playing in April, May, or September. I think I love that element of it and that tactical element of it. Kind of brings teams down to different levels and bring team up and things like that. So, I love the way the game's played there a bit more than when I look at Super Rugby now. It's not. I don't think it's as close to Test rugby as playing up north is. You're playing European rugby. I think it's closer to Test rugby, and it's probably what you're seeing now in World Rugby with those teams. With the teams in the south, bar South Africa, probably struggling against the Northern Hemisphere sides.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like Super Rugby is really, I loved watching it growing up, but it's all attack. And then for sure, like in the Northern Hemisphere, you have the wind, the rain, the heavier pitches, not so much anymore, but it's so, you need different kind of strategies, different tactics. It's so varied.
I think it's, I think about my time at Leinster, it was mainly defence focused. People go, oh, Leinster attack. We spent so much time on defence. I think defence, whereas, I know that, you're not sure now. Brumbies did a fair bit of defence, but other teams it's all attack and focus maybe in Super Rugby, and things will change. I know, but defence should be 70-80% of what you do, I reckon.
Yeah, and what was your most challenging or biggest shock or change when you went to Leinster?
That's a good question. Probably. Trying to think. I think it was they all knew. I think I had to really look at the game from a different angle as well. because I had this way of looking at a thing, which is, I think that I was a Brumby and this is a Brumby way of playing, and then to come up, this is the Leinster way, and I had to change the way I looked at the game a bit. I didn't. I still had that. That was still part of my journey, is playing at Brumbies and Wallabies and those things, and that was always in the back of my mind, and those things helped me. But Leinster was just a different way of looking at it, and that challenged me, and it was good. I think the big change for me was just going out. I was pretty much an out and out lock, so I've been playing a lot of six internationally and at Brumbies, and then so I got there and I was like, I need to put on weight and all these things and try to get bigger and the scrummaging aspect of it and the fatiguing of playing in the second row was more of a challenge than playing six.
So you just broke there. Oh, you're back.
So,
yeah. And was that a big difference of physicality then? Like you say, like Northern Hemisphere, but also slotting into the second row.
Yeah. I think the fatigue I suffered in games compared to what I was coming out off playing six in at Brumbies and then into heavy scrum, heavy maul. We mauled a lot at Brumbies as well, but probably heavy competition in that area in the north and dealing with those. It's I don't know if it's more physical. You're playing South African side still there in Super Rugby when I was playing. the derbies in Australia can get really physical, bogged down kind of games as well. So I don't buy in the fact it's more physical, maybe a little bit slower. Super Rugby can just be crazy quick at times, and too quick. I don't buy into it that it's more physical. Maybe when you're playing those French sides in Europe, it can be really, really physical because there's just such big sides.
Yeah, and then going back to coaching, like when you retired, was that always a plan? You wanted to coach, and still the case?
Yeah, it's still the case. I'm looking for some work here if I can, and trying to stay in it if I can. So, it's been like that was kind of always in the back of my mind. I want to coach, and that was part of the reason probably going to Leinster as well, is going to a good program and learn a different way. I think it's important for Australian coaches anyway, and I'm not sure about what Kiwis think about this, is to go up north and play or coach in the north as well. And you've seen with Ronan and Agar and those guys coming to the south and sending out. I think it's really important to see different things. So going up north and playing there was, I think, beneficial, hopefully to me being a better coach. But it's still a ways to go to get better as a coach anyway. I've got very, very green at the moment, and still still working my way through. I think I've got some good knowledge, but then trying to execute all that and get it down is different, a different story altogether.
Yeah, and I saw you played for a couple of years in Japan earlier in your career, didn't you?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit Japanese and get by. So I was there for 3 years actually. So up in the north, and so my Japanese is all right. So I got by when I went back. I was actually surprised that I could get by. I wasn't doing team meetings and anything like that, but I could understand what guys are saying a bit more than probably other coaches that just come in to Japan. So I was 3 years there, and I love that time. It was good for me, just focus on myself there. When that's the big thing there. When you're a foreigner, you just play well as yourself. Do the best you can do. It's a bit different in Europe. There's more going on, but in Europe, but in Japan, as a foreigner, you come in there, they just want you to see you play well. And I think I did that when I was there now 13 years ago now. So long time ago now.
Yeah, and so your journey, what didn't look like too conventional. You talk to me about that, like growing up, say high school or leaving high school and around that.
Yeah, so I played rugby since I was 6 or 7. But I always played. I have 2 older brothers who are pretty crazy, and we just play sport relentless with each other. Which was when looking back, it was such a benefit for me having 2 older brothers who were both good at sports and both, real competitors, and that kind of passed on down to me. So, and then when I went, so I finished high school, but I went to a public school, so I didn't go to rugby playing high school. I just went to a public school, which was awesome because it was like right on the beach. You're surfing in your free time, and it was a good lifestyle. Ideally, kind of growing up in that area, and I was really, I'd get up at 8 o'clock and get the 8:30 bus to school, and like home at sometimes at like 3:30 or whatever. Not a long day, and where the private school boys, they'd be gone, an hour and a half each way in the bus and things like that. So, I'm thankful that I had that upbringing and was able to live where I was. But then, I started to kind of taking rugby more. I was always a bit like relaxed with my rugby. I just, I probably didn't take it that seriously, and kind of started taking seriously so I was CHS with schoolboys. I was a year younger, so playing a year up, I made like the CHS team, and then I broke my leg in my playing club footy on the weekend, and that kind of put me behind. And then from there, I went on to my local club, Warringah, which I played for since I was 10, and played every grade there until I got to first grade, and then got an opportunity to, probably 3 or 4 years later, to play first grade, and then from first grade got picked up to tour with the Waratahs in 06, and then kind of went on from there and went to the Force the following year. Didn't play a game in the 08 season, and then came back to Sydney, played again for Warringah, and then after that went off to Japan for 3 years.
So you were 19, 20, 21 playing club rugby.
Yeah, Yeah, just playing. So at one stage there, I was playing. I think I had a game for fourth grade Colts at that stage. At one stage there, so I was 7 grades below first grade, something that was 8 grades, and then I played 2 years of first grade Colts. And then after that, played a year of third grade / second grade in grade, and then went into first grade from there.
And how was it then? Like, were you wanting? You said you're taking it more serious. Were you taking it seriously at that point, like around that
Not
time?
not in that period. Probably when I was playing Colts, it's probably the breaking of the leg kind of pushed me back. I probably wasn't taking it as serious as I should have. If I never rehabbed the leg properly, I reckon. If I didn't have that support really to do it, it was, we're talking now 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Or probably actually when I broke my leg, it was 2001. So it was 22 years ago now. So, it didn't really rehab the leg properly. It's probably why my knees stuffed on that side, my hips stuffed on that side, things like that. So, but it's, and it wasn't until like I played a second grade semi-final. We lost to Sydney Uni, and we played against a lot of super players in that. And I thought, I'm actually going all right. But I was like 95 kilo lock, like I was tiny at that stage still, because I didn't really take it that serious. And then I played first grade the following year from there, then went from there, kind of got my opportunity.
Cool. And did you have a kind of mindset switch when you like you saw that you played that game against them, and then were you like, all right, I'm going to actually try have a crack at this?
Yeah, I just thought I competed well against them, so played really well in the game, and thought, these guys aren't that far above me. If I just hit the gym a bit, do a bit extra running, and get fit, I can compete, if not be better than these guys. And that's what it was. Just like I had essentially an awakening of sorts. And then even then, I wasn't thinking I'm going to go play Super Rugby. I was thinking more, I'm going to go play first grade, because that was, I spoke to my club the other day. They had the derby versus Manly, and that was all I wanted at that stage, to play first grade. And from there things took off post that. But playing first grade was huge for me.
Cool. And then how did the opportunity kind of to get a break into professional rugby come?
Yeah, so I was spotted playing. Well, you're in the shop window essentially there at Shoot Shield, especially at that stage. That was the feeder into a Super Rugby. So and then I got an opportunity. The Waratahs picked me up, and I toured. We played Saracens, Northampton, Ulster, and Leinster. I missed the Leinster game. I didn't play. I was injured, but we played those on an end of season tour in 2006. And then I was joined the academy after that, the Waratahs Academy. So a mature age. I think would have been 2006. I would have been 22 at that stage. So a bit older than the other guys in the academy, but young now. Looking back at it, really still young and very naive as a professional. Didn't have any knowledge about being a professional player at all. Compared to others. Was that following year I got a job at one of the. I was still like labouring 3 days a week, and then I was like, I should give this a go. So I started labouring. Had Monday off, because we used to train at like 5:30 in the morning, and then in the afternoon. So I had Monday off, and then I'd train. I'd work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday labouring, like pretty heavy labouring, moving bricks, anything, and then train club footy, and then Tuesday, Thursday night, and then train again Friday, and then have Friday off again, but train morning and evening and that, and then Saturday morning as well. So I was, and at that stage the Waratahs were like, "Are you probably burning yourself out a bit here?" And they got me a job at one of the private schools, Knox Grammar, and I'd never been to one of the private schools before, and I walked in the door and I was like, "Oh my god, these guys have got like a whole gym and a pool and everything." I couldn't believe it. I was like, so like I was like, not that my school was bad. It was just it was a public school, but it was like I couldn't believe like what the kids had here. It was unbelievable. So, and then saw kind of that schoolboy element of the game, which I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. A couple of things there. It's interesting, like when you say 22, you think you're older. I don't know what you, but I was like, when you're that age, when you're young, you're 18, 19, you're like 22, you're past it. Or you just, I think it's such a misconception or a bad, like, young players really don't understand that you don't hit your prime till your late 20s, 28, 29, you know, physically and skill and everything. And it's crazy just how much time you have back then.
Yeah, well, so I played till I was 37 in the end. So that's 15 more years from post that feeling of feeling. So it's a decent career. And I think sometimes when you start a bit later, you get that up, like it helps you, like not having those big physical games when I was like 19 or 20, you know, being able to just slowly work my way in meant that even now my body's in pretty good shape. You know, I didn't get too bashed up in the early part of my career. You know, I got to work my way into the physicality of, you know, Super Rugby and Test Rugby and do it when I was probably more physically ready.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle because everyone else is 16, 17, 18, then they leave school and they're going in play. It's how quickly can you get there? You know, it's maybe half your 20s, you're playing first grade for your club when you're 19 or 18, and then you're playing maybe A-League games and stuff, and it takes a toll. A young, like no 19-year-old is physically ready.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's about a little bit. I think you also develop habits so you can stay there. And some guys, you see them come in and go, they come in and they blow the world out in, you know, Pro 14 or what's it now, URC. And then, you know, they have this lull period of 2 or 3 years where, you know, either they kick on or they kind of just stay in that period. You want to see that gradual growth, I think. And that's probably, and what allowed me to do as a player is when I got there, I was probably, you know, mature enough and ready enough and knew the game well enough to just, you know, slowly grow as I went along.
Yeah, I think it's no, just hearing that, I think it's a good way to go about, like gradually building your way in and being patient when you're younger. Like just understand that you have so much time and that, yeah, just gradually building up.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely it's, you know, some guys are just ready at that age as well. Though I reckon some guys at 20 are just ready to play. You know, that's just the way they are. You know, and they might have they might have an earlier finish their career, but they're ready to go. Look at a guy like Michael Hooper. You know, he was just ready at 20. He was ready to go.
Yeah, that's true. I remember I was playing back in Dublin with Lansdowne, and Max Deegan and James Ryan left school and joined us. And I remember just being like, Jesus, these are freaks. Like they were killing it at our club, like at 18, 19. And obviously they were fast tracked. But I remember just being like, what?
Yeah. James is one of those guys. He was physically, able. You know, where he came in because they probably weren't expecting him to take off as quickly as he did. You know, when I came into that's why I was there initially. You know, just to give a bit of cover and give him time, which is essentially what my role was to buy time for those locks to develop. And then, you know, he just flew straight past me. So he was more than ready to play at that level.
Yeah. And so going back then when you were breaking into professional rugby, you were getting looks with the Warriors and then Western Force. Then Japan, was it like just a better full-time contract, or what? Why did you decide to make the move up there?
Yeah, so I left the force, didn't play a game, pretty, tough experience in terms of professional, just didn't get a look in, pretty upset with it. Came back to Sydney, played pretty well in Sydney, and then it was actually GFC time. So GFC hit in 08, 09, a lot of the teams in Japan started folding. And Kamashi were like the last kind of contract on offer in Japan at that stage. And, if you've heard of Kamashi, it's right up north in the northeastern part of Japan. It's very cold. Some guys, saw someone on Instagram compare it to living over the wall in Game of Thrones. I saw someone compare it to that the other day. I spent my time over the wall, but it's a long way up. It's very quiet, very small little town, and very, very authentic Japanese. So it was a big move, but it was just to stay as a pro. Really, thought the way I looked at it was do a few years here, I'd save down from maybe the money's okay. It wasn't great money, but it was pretty good money, and I wasn't going to spend much money. I was still I could live at home when I was back. I didn't have to pay rent anywhere. So save a bit of money for a deposit on an apartment or house and just get a little bit ahead. and then I ended up staying there for 3 years. So just it was kind of an easy, the short season. I was home a lot, so spent a lot of time with mates at home. I used to finish there in December, be back in Australia for Christmas, and didn't have to be back until April or May. So I had kind of the summer in Australia, then the summer in Japan, and as it got cold, I left. It wasn't a bad lifestyle. Looking back at it, I was pretty lucky.
Yeah, it's cool. In Ireland, like Japan looks cool. No one really goes over there. I suppose Australia, because you got France and England nearby, but Australia, it was on your radar. You were just playing club, and you're like, I want to be a pro, and I'll head up there.
Yeah, I think it's only a 9-hour flight, same time zone. At that stage, it's always been it's still kind of probably 10 years before that guy started going up there. Because I played with a couple of guys. I played with a guy called Peter Miller who played Australian sevens for a long time. He was a top, and he'd been there for probably 6 or 7 years before I got there. So he'd been there from mid 2000s, so 2004 or something. He'd got there and been there for a long time. And before that, there was guys like Toto Kefu played there. And then at my club, there's a guy called Peter Slattery who he played for the Wallabies halfback, and he ended up playing up there and in Kamashi where I was. So there had been a history of Australians and Kiwis going there, but now there's a bit more South Africans going there now and things like that. So probably more heavily South African than New Zealand and Australia now.
Yeah, and how'd you go about it? Did you like get an agent, or how'd you
so my agent
out?
The agent came up with a deal, and I remember he just said, they want to meet you first. So it was like playing on the weekend, and for club footy, and they flew me over to sign the contract. So they flew me over on like a Monday, and he's like, just be, it's pretty out there, this place. Like it's not like living in central Tokyo. Yeah. So it's like I flew in, and then it was like an hour and a half train into Tokyo, and then another 3-hour train up north, fast train to another one, and then another 2.5-hour train.
Oh wow!
So I got there. I was like, oh, and then they took me out, and fed me and stuff, and we end up signing the contract the next day, and then back on the same trip back home, and flew out again on like the Wednesday night, arrived back Thursday morning in Australia, just completely exhausted trying to play footy that week as well. So, and then when I signed, I signed on that trip, and then flew over a few weeks later after visa stuff sorted, and they ended up, this time they picked me up from the airport and drove me 9 hours in the car from the airport. The doctor and the team manager, and I sat in the back of this car. I spoke no Japanese at all, and I drove 9 hours up the coast with these guys in the car.
So
he spoke no Japanese. He spoke no English. The doctor spoke a little bit of English, and then people don't tell you, but sometimes then they just they go, "This is your apartment," and then they go, "Oh, here you go, here are your keys, and there's that car out there. That's your car." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And then they said, "Oh, well, see you later. Have a good." I got there on like a Saturday, and they were like, "Have a good weekend." And I was like, "What do I do now?" I was just kind of, I didn't know anyone there and spoke no Japanese. I had one of those little phrase book, and just had to go from there. Just went over and watched they said training's Monday morning. I'll see you then, kind of thing. It was just like, oh. So it was actually, looking back on it, was really good for me because it just put me really out of my comfort zone. With all those things, I think it's great. Travel, people always say travel is really good for you. I think it was awesome for me to just experience something completely different. And anyone who's been in Japan knows it's just such a different culture to Australia.
Yeah, that's mad. And at that time as well, smartphones, or it just wasn't as much of a thing.
I think the iPhone came out maybe 2010, I think, maybe, or maybe around then. But not many people had them, and there was no Google. When I went back this time, I had Google Translate.
Yeah,
that was really handy. You could just translate with that. But I had a phrase book, like one of those traveler books one of my mates gave me, and I used to use that, which was it was tough.
Yeah. And how'd you go about learning Japanese then?
Well, the good thing was, because I was young, because I was a single young guy, the boys, they were great. The Japanese boys were actually great. They were my club. They used to just take me out on the drink all the time, and I used to drink with them all the time. And I just listen. I just sit there and just take it all in, and just it was so like at first it was like really hard to pick things up, but then I'd hear a word and I'd always ask him what was that word you just said, because you keep saying that word, and then even when we'd be like going to camps or games, I'd be on the bus and I'd just listen for words, and then I'd have my book out. I'd be writing things down, and you kind of, and it was all around insults. Like so, I'd
Yeah.
hear the insult and I'd follow in like you would in any rugby team. You always like have a bit of crack, as you say, in Ireland, and so just learn the insult words, and then go from there. And that's kind of how I got by. And but they were great. As I said before, the Japanese players were awesome for me there, because it was a small town and a small team. We spent a lot of time together, and they were really welcoming to me, and I had a great experience up there.
That's unreal. That's incredible. Fair play. Like I always wonder, yeah, like people going over to different countries, obviously like France, Japan, and all that. And yeah, some people don't learn the language, don't they not? And then, but yeah, fair play. That's class.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm fluent. I can speak enough. I can't say that I can do much with it. I can get by. I can order you a nice meal maybe in Japan, but that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. And did you ever learn how to write it?
I used to learn used to know a bit more of the hiragana, which is used to know kind of what they say. And if I look at it on page now, I can kind of read a little bit, know, oh, that says that. But then writing it's like, that's a pretty high level of Japanese if you can write it, because you've got like hiragana, katakana, and katakana is like the English words they use, and then you've got the kanji as well. The kanji, so there'll be like kanji will be like one symbol that will mean a whole word, kind of thing. So we want So once you get into that, to learn the kanji takes you years and years. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
that's mad. And then, so when you were there for a couple of years, like, how'd you get back to the Brumbies? Or like you impressed, or is it just like tape and just someone gets in touch? Or
Yeah, so I when I went for the third year, I kind of said to myself, because you find yourself, I go, this isn't like going forward. I can't live like this 6 month here, 6 month at home. I can't just keep doing this, because it's like, it's all right, it's grand, but it's getting a bit much, and I'm missing things. I want to, either settle back, get a job in Australia, or just if something comes up, it comes up. And then I got an offer from the Brumbies are looking for kind of like an older player, because they had a young squad in that stage. A lot of guys moved on from the 2011 season. They wanted someone a bit older, and Laurie Fisher reached out to my agent, and then I met Bernie Larkham. Actually, he was coaching Rico at the time, so I met Bernie up there, and and then signed a rookie contract, and went back to Canberra, arrived back in Canberra in December of 2011. So I finished up, played on the Saturday, December the 2nd or 1st, and was at training for the Brumbies on the 4th of December, ready to go. So, and then started my first horror preseason with Dean Benton, which was incredibly tough.
so once again, you're like 2 years in, 3 years thinking like, if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job at like in your whatever mid to late 20s.
Yeah. Like I think that because I just worked and did whatever, I think that I always felt like working's not that bad. Some guys are like chasing, they're playing rugby and they're like, oh, we're going to get away from work, but I was like, yeah, you're going to have to work. And not many guys finish the game even now at my age and whatever. I had a decently long career, but guys, you're going to have to work at some stage. So you shouldn't be kind of scared of it in some way. So I guess I always just was like, oh, well, I'll go work again, or find a job and get into it and go from there.
Yeah, nice one. And then you got into Wallabies pretty quickly once you went back, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did 2012 season, and then 2013 I debuted for the Wallabies, and after the Lion series. So they lost the Lion series, and then I debuted in the next test after the Lion series versus New Zealand in Sydney. So yeah, it was something I never thought I'd do. I was 29 at that stage, so I never thought that I'd play for my country. I was looking back at it, I just couldn't believe at the time that I was actually there, even though like I'd played well in Super Rugby. I played in the final of Super Rugby that year. We lost to the Chiefs. I didn't believe that I'd played Super Rugby at all. I mean, played Test Rugby at all. Until I remember they announced to the team in Johannesburg, and that you were in the squad, and I was like, we were playing well. We had 16 guys in the squad or something like that. So yeah, it was incredible.
Class. And then what do you think helped you stay there? Like, you were kind of pretty consistent throughout a few years then, weren't you?
Yeah, so I played I played 39 tests. I played pretty much 4 years straight.
Straight.
Yeah, and then yeah, I was just I don't know what helped me stay there. I think there's not many. I think really helped me was Brumbies are very set piece orientated, and test matches they prepares you well for test matches. We did a lot of work at set piece at Brumbies, and that prepared me well to be a test player. I think guys like Laurie Fisher and then later Dan McKellar, two good coaches I had there. They prepared me to play test footy, and I was, that was, what really helped me. I think that was really beneficial and kept me around there.
And what was it like stepping up then to, like, you're going from Japan to Brumbies to Test Rugby? Did you find big step up? Like,
yeah, but I said to people when I said, I remember even when I was playing at Leinster with young guys, I used to say to them, it gets easier because the players around you are better. So
yeah,
and I was probably one thing that as a player I was good at was feeding off good players, like helping good players be better, or me being better around better players. So that was something I could see someone, I had that ability, I think. And that's obviously, I remember saying so many young guys, I go, don't worry. Like, you could see some of the young guys, especially at Leinster, be nervous about their first run. I say, mate, don't worry, it gets easier as you go up. It's easy now because you're playing with good players. So all you got to do is do your job. That's like as simple as it is. You do because there's more guys, when you get to a better level, there's more guys doing their job well, and you just got to do your job well. And then it's kind of like everyone looks after themselves. And then it's not as much like you don't have to what you don't sit in that change room and go, I'm worried about this guy. I'm worried. You sit in a change room and go, he's played 50 tests. He's this guy. He's always shows up. So as you get to a better level, it kind of gets a little bit easier as you go.
yeah, it's so interesting, so true as well. Yeah, because when you're younger, you can be playing on like a bad school team, and you and one other guy have to do it all, and you're just trying to do everything. And yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, I think that's it's really important that for guys. I think you see guys trying to push themselves to like do too much on the field and stuff like that. It's important that guys around you just as good as you or better than you. So just work together, and I think you see good teams do that really well.
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's such a paradox when you try and do too much, you like fall, you just fail. Like, it's just.
Well, it's like in anything in life, balance is so important. I think in doing what you do, like if you don't balance yourself out, or if you try to put too much on your plate, you're always going to burn out, or you're going to make mistakes or whatever. Having that ability, that comes with age as well. Like anyone, having that ability to say, I don't need this, I need that, or that only comes with experience.
Yeah, and what just with the levels, like what was the level which you found most challenging at the start from your whole career?
I don't know. I don't think I'm trying to think if I found them challenging. I don't know if I found them like when you go to test footy. I think the external stuff around test footy is challenging. So there's pressures that come with that, whether they're genuine pressures or they're just kind of, I think they're almost made up in your head, those pressures. You talk yourself into the pressure of test footy, right? But you could easily just say, listen, it's looking back at it, I could say it's just a game, which it is, just a game. But you let everything around you feed into this narrative that it's pressure. And like I look back at my own career, I've lost the biggest. I'm probably the only person to lose a World Cup final, a European final, and a Super Rugby final. I think I'd probably be the only person to lose the three biggest games in the rugby calendar. I don't know if anyone else has done that, but I'm still here. I'm still fine. I still went on and played after those games and had a good career and won lots of games, still run trophies as well. I've had that share of disappointment, but, I think you kind of make that pressure up on yourself a little bit in some ways.
Yeah, 100%. And did you kind of suss that throughout your career?
Well, yeah,
That
yeah. I mean, it's a funny, like, nerves and all those things that come into it. I think it's a funny thing to try to balance and take it. How do you take it serious? You're taking it serious, but not too serious. And it's like, it's a difficult balance. It's a difficult balancing act for everybody.
yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think everyone gets nervous. That's just something
Yeah,
that happens. Like everyone, they don't go. I think it's something that you just have to accept. It's like you're going to get nervous.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if I was a yeah. I think you looked at the worst case scenarios all the time. And it's like, oh, what if I do this? What if? And all I wanted to do when I played, I haven't looked back too much on my playing days that much over the last 15 months since I stopped. But I've always thought how I was just worried about letting down the guys around me. That's all. I just didn't want to do something that let down the people around me, and that's I didn't really care about what people said outside of that the team or my family, yeah, maybe, but I think you still want to let the team down. That was the biggest pressure that you had on yourself, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a good driver as well. Like not want to let the boys down and to get after and do your job.
Yeah.
And with like you say, the pressure externally, or the pressure you put on yourself, did you get support with the Wallabies with Leinster, like mental skills,
No,
coaches, or
no, we had a bit of no. I didn't really. Uh, we didn't really have that support network in that way. With coaches who, coaches, a good coach will ease your pressure, ease that kind of stuff. I think, and they make you play unshackled, and they restrict you when you have to be restricted, but they make you feel like if you can, they bring the best out of you in that way. They have that relationship with you where you wouldn't worry about making a mistake because you know that you're working hard and all those things. So no, I didn't have that much. We did a lot of mindfulness, a lot of what's it called, imagery, positive imagery in
oh,
your head.
visualization?
Visualization, sorry, yeah. So I did a lot of visualization. We before Brumbies games, we do a lot of visualization. Wallabies as well. Not as much in Ireland. Didn't do that much visualization. So, but it was like kind of meditations before games and things like that to get us into a calm state. So we played fairly level-headed.
Cool. Yeah. Where would you have been doing the meditations before games? Where was that?
At the team hotel and things like that. So just a visualization session essentially run by the coaches.
Yeah.
Just just get through and think, and he'd be talking about positive things that are going to happen in that game. And it was good. It got you into it did calm you down when you're leading into a game. You'd obviously be very nervous and all those things. And it would just that ability to breathe and lie down in silence. And you probably sit there with the smartphones. You're probably picking up your smartphone and reading everything that's going on, and you don't realise that your mind's getting very busy. Before a game, that's why night games kind of suck because it's a long day of lying around with your mind going in and out of things. So, I think it helped me. I think it was good. It was a good little thing to do. The visualization's good. I think now a lot of hookers do it with their throwing, just visualizing. I think it's really beneficial to hookers. Guys who get a bit like I get sometimes if I forget calls and stuff in lineouts, I like to visualize, especially going into bigger stadiums. I'd walk in and I'd walk through all the calls in my head in a certain spot on the field most times, and then just visualize that. Those key kind of things I have to get right.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I read in a book there recently that Maradona, someone was playing a charity game with Maradona and they went to the stadium with him at like 2 o'clock in the day before the night. He ran around for like 10 minutes playing an imaginary game, kicking, scoring goals, doing knee slides, celebrating, run over to the fans, like empty stadium. And he did this and he's like, I do this every day, before every game. And literally what you were saying there, like you were kind of doing lineouts on the field, and there's studies showing it, like it 100% helps, like doing that.
Must be something around. Must be something around about a creation as well in your brain, like creating the pathway to do something, or the creativity that it takes to be, a really good athlete like Maradona was. There must be something in that, in terms of that.
Yeah, they've kind of proven, or studies have shown that the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something you imagine and something that actually happens. So when you're visualizing the game happening, your subconscious mind thinks you've already played it, so like you get experience, you know what I mean? If you do it
Oh,
50
yeah,
times, it's as if you feel as if you've played 50 games, so then you feel more confident when you go out there in the field. It's not as daunting.
yeah, yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
So it's cool. How did you with the evening games, how did you get like manage your energy throughout those days, like 7:30 kickoff, and you're probably up early in the morning, like you're probably in early enough during the week, and then so the body clock could probably be set for getting up at 7, or getting up early.
Yeah, so that was the big thing. Was like when I didn't have kids, when I was the Brumbies and stuff like that. It didn't matter because of what I do. Like if we were playing New Zealand, I'm as big on trying to get my sleep right because I think it's the only control you can have. There's not much you can control, but sleep is a massive thing for recovery and getting ready. So if you're playing New Zealand at 7 o'clock, it'd be a 5 o'clock game, but you'd have to be up and all flights and stuff. So I'd be trying to go during the week. I'll be trying to get up at 6 and things like that. So that'd be 8 o'clock. So that I'd be targeting my Saturday to be getting up at 8 a.m. when I arrived in New Zealand. So I used to try to do that and then be consistent around getting up at 8 during the week. And then if I was in Australia, or obviously getting up for training and stuff like that. But then within that, then on the weekend I'd make sure I just slept as long as I could in the morning because I wasn't a day napper. A lot of guys are like, you they'll have a line in the afternoon, sleep for 2 hours in the afternoon and feel good and play. But I didn't really like napping in the day. I just couldn't do it. So I'd just sleep as long as I could in the morning, try to sleep till like 9 o'clock if I could, and then up and have coffee, breakfast and go from there. But it changes when you have kids because then suddenly they're in the room at 6:37 and you just got to adjust. And I felt that I managed that pretty well. And it shows you how like it all doesn't matter that much, it's because I did all that work to try to kick, and then you had kids and they throw everything out, they throw that all out because you can't do that. You can't get up later because the kids will be there and you've got to look after the kids. And, Saturday, a lot of the time I'd be up now when I had 2 kids, and I'd take the oldest with me, go get a coffee and a bit of breakfast together, the 2 of us. And he was like 2 or 3 at that stage. So still a busy day, with the kids anyway. And then you turn up and play. But often you play better because your mind's just busy and you didn't think about the game that much before you got there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, being occupied is good versus, like you were saying earlier, on your phone or just like trying to kill time or just sitting around is kind of the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, that's why I love a bit of golf on my day off and things like that. Just something to keep my mind away from the game as best I could. Just 18 holes of golf. The boys would give me shit at Wednesday because I'd always play every Wednesday, rain, hail or shine. I'd always be out there playing golf because it was just I'd step away and just play for 18 holes and come home, and that was my step away time.
Yeah, nice one. Was there a crew in Leinster that played?
There was a few, yeah. There's lots of guys playing there now. Some of those young guys, like Dan Sheehan, he's an unbelievable golfer. He's really hits the ball really well. Jordan Lama hits it well. I played with me and James Tracy, kind of played all the way through summer, all the way through winter. Sorry, or you would kind of like run around these courses in the middle of winter and in the cold and wind, and like we just go, we got to play, just keep playing. So we had a little crew that played, and then it was great. It was great fun. But Rob Carney's another one I played. Dave Carney, Reece Ruddock, Sean Cronin, interesting golfer. He's good. So I had a lot of fun playing some really good courses around Ireland as well.
Who was the best, or who usually won the money?
Who's the best? I don't know. I think Jordan Lamar was really good. Kieran Frawley's actually another one was good, but he used to say he was playing off 18, but he's probably playing off 5. He's a burglar. Yes, a lot of the young guys coming through are really good. They've all rich kids of Dublin. They've been members of golf clubs their whole life, so they're ready to go. When they get there.
Yeah. Have you kept it up since?
I didn't play much in Japan. I've been playing back here in Newcastle a bit of time off, so I've been playing a bit. But Japan was just with 2 kids there and tiny little apartments. I didn't have much time to get away. I was hoping to play more golf than I did.
Yeah, nice one. Well, hey, thanks a lot for your time. Been unreal chatting. Any any advice you give a young player, say 18, keen rugby player?
one thing I do, I was thinking about this the other day is because now I'm sitting here as a 37-year-old retiree. I'd say get your body. I'd say invest in like looking after your body, as much as you can, because that's, from the word go. So it doesn't mean like, go out and drink or do it, young guy, be a young guy, but at the same time, like all those little things in your body that, like if you've got a bad knee or you've got a weakness there, go and start that process now. So that when you get to my age, your body's still in good condition and you're on top of those things. And I wish that I probably took more control of the physical stuff in my, I did a fair bit, but I probably should have taken more control of what I did physically in gyms and, things like that. So, and stretching, I think it's important to be really flexible in the game and all those things. Get that, when I got that kind of, I didn't get that till later in my career, that kind of professionalism around flexibility. And, I wasn't a big gym user. I never liked using the gym that much. So, but all those things, I think, you can get on and just enjoy it as well. I think that's always the most important thing. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it.
Yeah, 100% great stuff.
At the end of the day, it's just a game.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you're younger. So I don't know, but wherever else, but in Ireland, it was like we just lift heavier, lift heavier. It's all you're focused on always was lifting heavier and getting heavier and never stretching.
Better now. I'd say lift better and lift more range and all that stuff to come, especially when you're only 18, because you get into bad habits of lifting heavy and lifting with, I'd just say lift with more range and before you lift heavier. You say that, but it's or don't lift at all like me.
Yeah, and with the enjoying it thing, did you it's another hard thing, I think, when you're young to understand. It's like you're always so focused on the next thing. But was there a point in your career where you kind of sussed like, I just have to enjoy what I'm at, or did you always?
I think I always enjoyed it. I think I understood that I was pretty lucky especially when I became a professional, coming back to the Brumbies. I had this sense of I was really, really lucky because, I knew that a lot of guys wanted to be professional rugby players. They didn't get the opportunity. Me coming late to it, I was privileged to get essentially a second chance to play rugby professionally. So I always felt that, I was very grateful that, with the job I had at that stage. And then, I think it's a tough one. I remember talking a long time ago at the Brums with the guys, and the lines get blurred quickly because you start this game you start a game that you play for fun with your mates on a Saturday morning or at school or whatever. There's no pressure about it. It's just having fun, running with the ball, playing really loose. And then you become a professional and you lose that touch with it. It becomes a job. And when it becomes a job, it becomes pressure and all those things that come with it. And what we talked about earlier, the pressure that's not there, but it's there, and then so I think it's important to understand that it's still a game you played as a child. You just got really good at it. And you play against really good players, but those things are still part of it. So, and then so I think that's the hard thing to try to balance out. To say it's still a game that you love playing as a child, but now you're just a really good pro at it. Yes, be a professional, but enjoy being a professional because you could be doing something else.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point you make. And something I've been really realizing recently and working with young players on the mental side of the game, but is that that's what the flow state is, or in the zone. What you're saying, like as a kid, when you're in the schoolyard at like 7, 8, 9, 10, we played soccer, like football, you're just playing, loving it, or playing rugby, like when you're a kid, you're just loving it. Like you're just loving it. And then as you grow up, it's like you said, you start to put this pressure, like, you get into a rep team where you do whatever, and it's you doing it kind of. And it's
no
all
no one else, man.
No, and
like
it's
your parents still gonna love you. Like that doesn't change anything. I look at my own kids now and I just think I don't want, they're only young, but if they get into it, just for them not to feel that pressure I never felt that pressure. And that I was lucky because my parents, and I was a third child, so I never had the pressure. I remember saying to my father I was going to quit playing rugby because it was, something, and he's still going to quit. And he didn't say like, don't. He didn't say you can't quit. You said you can if you want, mate. But I think you're all right at it, you should probably give it a go for a bit longer because you're pretty good at it. And that's all he said to me. And then I was like, okay, all right. Okay, I'd end up not quitting. But it was a good way of going about it from him, because he didn't say to me, oh, you can't quit, you've put all this work in. He kind of just said, like, no, you just stick at it a bit. I think, you can be better at this, or, you don't need to be better at it. You're good enough. Just keep pushing on. And I think that helped. Having that family life is really helpful, I think, for me. And I'm always grateful for the fact that I had, supportive siblings and parents around me, and now a wife and kids.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, sometimes only the smallest bit of encouragement to a player can mean so much.
Oh, yeah, I remember those in my time. It's just the small conversations you have over a beer with someone at the end of a game. When someone might say, "Oh, geez, I think you played well," or so beneficial. It's so beneficial for a player. To say, "Listen, you're a good player, mate." Even you might see a player. I remember watching Kalen Doris play. We got smashed by Connacht in the first game. In the last game of the year, there was John
Muldoon's
Muldoon's last game, but I remember watching Kalen Doris and going, mate, this guy's red hot. And I remember just texting saying, mate, you played really well. I know the result didn't go on, whether it helped you or not, but I just said that I thought you were really good individually. You played really well, because he was fantastic in that game. The next year he's kicking on from there, and going playing. Now he's playing for Ireland. Now he's one of the best back rows in the world. So I think there's always room for that. Little bits of telling someone they're going well. A lot of times we always tell people they're not going well, or they're not playing well. When someone's going well, just give them a little, yeah, you're going well, good stuff.
Yeah, it's something I'm aware of. I need to do it more and more. Just keep doing it as a coach. Just like letting people. I do it a bit, but just keep doing it, letting them know. Like you can never assume that someone knows they're good. I think like someone, like I'm coaching. I'm like, they're good. Like fuck, they were good today. But you can't just assume that they know it.
No, yeah, you can't. Yeah, you're 100% right, because you have that voice in your head that's going all the time, right? And that voice is, especially with people in professional sport, in sport generally, they always like, they just have that self-doubt that creeps in. So every time you give that, just pushes that away a little bit. So
Yeah, and it's such sorry to let you go, but it's such an interesting one that I think when you're younger, I don't know, old school coach, you're like, oh, geez, don't want them to get ahead of themselves. But it's like no players are, like they don't give you any praise. They don't give you anything. But it's like, no, players aren't getting ahead. From my experience, very few players are getting ahead of themselves. If anything, they're beating themselves up.
some players do. You have to give them a little
Some, yeah.
can't say anything to them. There's certain players you wouldn't say it to, but 90% of players you could say something.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, thanks, Mil, for your time, Scott. Been unreal chat.
Pleasure.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, mate. And, all the best with your coaching, and